My name's Mark Long, like Ben just said, and I'm with Carlson Software. Been with them for about 10 years. Been in design engineering for about 35 years. So, on the private side. So what we're going to do today is we're kind of picking up where we left off last time because we just did some road net. And we're just going to kind of start by laying in some storm drainage today. And then we'll do detention ponds and things like that at another time. But there's some things that we got to talk about beforehand if you want to get the most bang for your buck out of the hydrology module. And honestly and truthfully, it really starts with closed polylines on their own layer and text associated with those closed polylines kind of on their own layer. And I'll show you what I mean by that. It's just a little bit different. So what I'm going to do here is first thing I want to show you guys is I have a bunch of closed polylines around here, and I'm going to isolate them so you guys could see it here. We'll get him, and I want that guy, and I will take that guy. So we isolate these, and what you guys can see here is that I have drawn closed polylines that are on their own distinct layer. Now, since I don't really have the text to worry about here, it don't matter. But the key thing about this is when we are looking to get our weighted C or composite Cs, we need to assign ground cover to certain aspects of the of our CAD file. Okay, so when you come into hydrology, which is the rain cloud here with what looks like rain coming out of it, you click on that, and what you can see at the top here are the first 7 in Carlson software of these across the top are the same in every module. Okay, where things start to get different is after that, and what we have that we will be using today, we're going to use a little bit of watershed, and we're going to use network. Network is where all the pipe sizing and designing of pipes takes place. Watershed will allow us to control the ground covers here. So let's go ahead and we'll get started. You see I've got 3 layers, and each one has its own closed polylines. So if we look at, you see these are all on a layer called W building. I use the W in front just so I can turn it off and on really quick, and it just represents watershed for me. I copy my line work from my CAD file to this layer, okay, because I don't want to see close. The very first time I show this polyline going across on set of plans, somebody's going to be going, what's that? So what I do is I will copy my back of curb, my edge of pavement, building footprints, things like that. If you had sand, like a playground or a mail kiosk, those things, you can describe that as a ground cover. So let me show you how we do that. And I just isolated these just so you guys could see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go to watershed first. Define watershed layers is the very first command here that really gets you started on the hydrology. Nobody says you've got to do this. You can always type in your runoff coefficients or curve numbers. You can always do that. But if you want the program to do it and break it down for you, here's how to do it. So first thing we have to do is decide, are we going to use the hydro method? Is it going to be the rational, the SCS, or HydroCAD? Now, the rational is what we're going to use. That's what I use for pipe sizing. Now I'll use the SCS for a little bit of detention pond, things like that, but most of the time I'm going to stick with the easy one. And what I'm going to do is I am going to add layers here with specific ground covers and coefficients. Okay, so the very first thing we need to do is add. Okay, so I'm going to add. It says, what's the ground cover? What's the layer? Let's select the layer, screen pick it, and we'll select W buildings. Okay, so that layer's here, and then we need to assign a ground cover to it. So we'll go to our libraries and we will go, I don't know, let's just say roofs. Okay, and we will go with that. And so you can see the ground cover and the runoff coefficient. Now the things down here at the bottom are for hatching. And you'll see what I'm talking about when it comes to hatching in just a minute. So I'm going to click OK. You see it gets added to our list, and we have 3. Okay, so I'm going to add another. I'm going to select the layer. I'm going to screen pick, and I'm going to grab this yellow polyline here because that's my roadways, and I will scroll down to streets asphaltic. It's going to put asphalt down. Say OK, 0.82, click OK. We've got 2. Now I want you to think of these as when you're setting this up as pre-development and post-development. Okay, because you're going to have a pre. The pre may not have anything in here except maybe it's down here a farm field or woods, unimproved areas, things like that. But for right now, I'm going to keep on adding. So let's select our layer. Let me screen pick. I just want to slide in here, grab a hold of that, and you can see, now we'll go, this guy, we'll just make him streets concrete. Okay, now we've got 3 totally different runoffs with their own items on each layer. Now, let me click OK here for just a second here. And I think I got a question. Yes, you certainly can, Scott. You can always overwrite it. You can add your own. You can do, there's a ton of stuff. Nobody says that you have to use the program the way I'm kind of showing you guys, but because you can always overwrite. And when you go into your watershed layers, if you were to add a new one, we won't pick a layer because I don't have another one, but we can select the ground cover. So if you wanted to, you could add a new, just give it a name, whatever you want to call it, and put the runoff coefficient in there for it. And same thing with the curve or the curve numbers. The only thing you're going to have to do is put in the A, B, C, and D type soils when it comes to that, the hydraulic soils group. So yes, you can. So now that I'm just going to cancel, get this back. Now, let's talk about the rest of this dialog box, because what we're going to do and how we're going to consider this thing, if I can slide this down just a touch, get it out of our way a little bit, is that the default ground cover, anything that is not inside of these closed polylines gets assigned the default ground cover. So let's just say if you had a tree line up here somewhere, you're going to need to add your trees in here, and then what's the rest of the area and stuff like that, because the default ground cover is what's going to be used all the way around the right of way and between the houses and things like that. So what I typically do is I'd come in here and say where I'm at, I got sandy soils. So I'm probably going to go 2 to 7%, something like that. That becomes the default ground cover. So if it's not listed in our list of layers up here, it gets the default ground cover, which the runoff coefficients will come in, and you'll see. You can always change these. You can, again, you have total control. Nobody says you have to do this, but this is pretty handy if you do things right up in the front end when you're laying out your subdivisions or shopping centers and things like that. Now When we do switch over to the SCS method, we can incorporate soils line work. Okay. Now, I put this on a layer called e-soils, existing soils. Okay. Now, remember how I told you about the labels? Well, this is where I place the label. And what that label is a simple A, B, C, or D. And that will break it down based off of soil types as well as layers and so on. So you want to keep these two separate. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to show you, I've got my watershed line work layers going on just a W watershed layer. Runoff flow polyline is W flow line. And then of course I've got my W watershed space text. Okay, that's what's going on down here. Now, remember I told you about the whole hatching thing? Well, the hatching for this part of the program is going to show you uh, that it's working correctly. Because if it's not a closed polyline on its own layer, then it will not hatch. And so this is a giveaway to let you know if it's doing correctly. So I can just hatch all. Now, once I do that, you can see those are the different ground covers that I have: roofs, asphalt, concrete. Okay. And then everything else is the default ground cover. That's pretty simple and pretty easy to follow. There's nothing fancy about this because it really is just polylines. So going back to my watershed, I always check just to make sure I didn't miss something. So now once I've done that, I could come back in here and I could say, clear my hatch. Okay. And so now I don't have, now if you wanted it on, if you have to do a watershed layers, ground cover type of map in your plans, then leave them on, hatch them. You know, you could change the hatch patterns, everything about it. And then you could go ahead and create your sheet showing the information that's here. Okay. Now, now, if I switch over, I'm going to do it real quick. If I switch over to the SCS method and we come into W buildings and go look at our library, now you see the A, B, C, and D hydraulic soils groups. So that this is where, you know, when we import soils into the program, uh, a lot of times they come with this um, hydraulic soils group. So let me go ahead and say, okay, let me go ahead and just, I'm going to cancel that and I'm going to switch back to the rational so we get our stuff back because we're pipe sizing. HydroCAD down here, what HydroCAD does is when you send out, you can send out information from Carlson to HydroCAD in the form of HydroCAD's runoff layers, because in HydroCAD, the layer assigns the ground cover. So that's why that's in here. A lot of people enjoy using HydroCAD, and you know, but it's not necessarily if not necessary if you have Carlson, but people are comfortable with it. So you know, there's an option in here. So what I'm going to do is, first thing, once I've done this, you know what I do? I'm going to go in here and save this as post-construction. Save. These will be the exact same settings I used to decide the detention pond. So I'm just going to go ahead. Yep, let's replace it. And I'm going to click OK. Oop, the default runoff coefficient. Yeah, I knew that was going to catch me. There we go. And OK. So you'll get warned if you miss a number, or if you switch from, I guess, rational to SCS and that ground cover number turns into a 1 to 100, you know, type of deal.